Mr. Crittenden, would you do us the honor of
Yes,
the
I will.
invocation?
Let's stand, please. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this day you've blessed us with. Thank you, Father, for the traveling grace to get here. Thank you for the council members present. I pray a prayer for our chair today. Help us to do business and do good work for our people. Thank you for those in our audience, the staff members, and those that might be guests here to visit and learn. Thank you, Father, for all the blessings you give us as a people, as a tribe. I ask for leadership, guidance, and for our leaders. Help us, Father, to do good for our people. And forgive us where we fail. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Roll call.
Meredith Fraley. Here. Bill England.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates. Here. Bradley Cobb. Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishinghall. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Here. Don Garvin. Chuck Hoskin Jr. Tina Glory Jordan. Curtis Snell. Chris Soap.
Here.
David Thornton. Kara Cowan Watts.
Honey,
We do have a quorum.
we have a quorum. Next order of business, approval of the February 25th regular session minutes.
So moved.
Moved and second, any discussion on the minutes as written? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Minutes stand approved as written. Next item are reports. First report is Ms. Wright, Marshal Service.
Good afternoon, Council. As you can see, my name's Officer Driftwater. I'm standing in for Mrs. Wright today on reporting. I'll get right along here because I know you have several things on the agenda. Patrol issues in some of our districts out here. I believe Delaware County, for last month, had 1 arrest for an outstanding warrant. Mace County had 3 arrests for outstanding warrants, 1 arrest for narcotics. Craig County, 1 arrest on outstanding warrants. And as you can see, some of these arrests too are assisting those agencies within our boundaries. District 2, Cherokee, 9 arrests on outstanding warrants, 4 arrests on alcohol-related crimes, 1 arrest for narcotics, 1 arrest for, let's see, I believe 1 arrest with firearms violation. District 3, which is Adair County, 8 arrests on outstanding warrants, 2 arrests on alcohol-related crimes, and 1 arrest for narcotics. Sequoia 2, 2nd District, Sequoia, 2 arrests on outstanding warrants, 2 arrests on narcotic violations and drugs. District 4, Delaware, 3 arrests for alcohol violations. In the Tulsa area, 2 warrant arrests. Rogers, 4 warrant arrests, 1 domestic and 1 alcohol violations. On investigative issues in District 1, I believe over in Washington County we had a fraud embezzlement. And over in District 2, here in Cherokee, we also had an embezzlement case. District 3, Adair, I think it's going to all pertain to child welfare cases. District 4, Rogers, we just had a theft at that time. Also notes right here on other issues, had a very successful, and I might add, a cold polar bear plunge fundraiser for the Special Olympics. If you notice, Council, also, most of these arrests out here is pertaining to drugs and narcotics, and I like to say that we're trying what we can with programs that still exist. You see Mr. Ragsdale present with us today when we started the DARE program, but we're trying to work within the communities out there at networking and trying to use the resources that we have. And I know it's very, very slim, but we're trying to do what we can out there to work with the school systems and such on combating drugs on awareness. Any questions?
Questions or comments from Mr. Buzzard?
On the investigative report,
Yes.
you may have this set up different, but you got District 1, Washington County, District 2, Cherokee County. Is that something within your marshal services that will change or what?
Within the, are you saying the districts?
Yeah, you got District 1. I thought that was here in Cherokee County. And
Oh.
you got Washington County fund embezzlement. Is that, why are we doing that?
They just, I think they when they printed this, they came out with the numbers backwards. But as far as the arrests and such, they should show the accurate amount. You're talking about the arrests and such?
Well, no, I was just saying, and where it says investigative issues, you got District 1 and you say Washington County. I'm used to saying District 1 be like in Cherokee County.
Yes, yeah,
And is that just a typical?
that's just a typo error, I'm sorry.
Right, that's fine.
Further, Mr. Bedford?
Did you, they have your...
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Drecklewater? You did good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Baker?
Madam Chairman, at this time, I have a request from the Youth Council that they would like to come and report to this committee meeting quarterly, and they'd like to start today. So I want to move the amendment agenda to item 9 for a report from the Youth Council.
Second. Moved in second, any discussion on amending the agenda? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign, motion carries. The next two reports are the Office of Attorney General, Mr. Morton.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm appearing today for Ms. Hammonds. In addition to the written report, we have a jury term, a tribal jury term starting on Monday, and I believe that we have resolved everything prior to trial except for one case. And we have one juvenile case set for trial on Monday. And I think they'll talk about this more next month, but we have two items that are going before the 10th Circuit for oral argument, I believe early May. We have an Indian child welfare case that will be heard, and also the poultry appeal. And I think there will be more detail next month. Are there any other questions?
Comments from Mr. Morton? Yes.
I know you probably can't discuss the details of any pending litigation, but did a lawsuit arise out of the arrest of the performer at Cherokee Nation Casino last year? Has there been a suit filed to your knowledge? If you're not familiar, there was a performance at Cherokee Nation Casino. He was arrested for apparently violating a state law that touched on flag desecration, and I had heard that there was a lawsuit, and I didn't know if that was something that your office was aware of.
I think it's been filed. If it has been filed, would you like a copy of the petition? Or
I just was curious who was named as defendants.
I have not read it. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other? Yes, Mr.
I
Bedford?
have a question. I know you probably told us before, Mason, but on these jury trials, how is the jury selected? How's it go like that?
It looks like it's a pretty good mix of all the counties.
So do they just draw it from the registered voters, or like the state juries do?
I don't know. I know they take it from Cherokee citizens, and they may use the registration roll. I can find out.
That'd be interesting just to know.
Okay.
Information.
Any other questions? Be good.
Thank you.
Oh, there's nothing on GEG, I guess, that you have to report, I'm sorry.
Not at this time, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, Election Commission. Anyone from the Election Commission here? We do have their report, so we'll move on to Ms. Webston, Tax Commission. Afternoon, Jen.
How are you? I believe you do have my report in front of you, and I will try to answer any questions that you might have regarding that.
Questions for Ms. Webston? Mr. Buzzer?
Tag office and J.
I knew that was coming.
I have had more calls about that than anything.
My understanding is it's moving along, and last I talked to Mr. Greenfeather, they thought they were going to have it completed by the end of March, first part of April. Then we will have to go in and do some stuff for a counter, get our safe put in place, get the parking lot finished and all of that. So we're looking probably sometime in April.
Well, we're looking probably in June or July to get it open.
I've got staff hired.
Realistically, if
Well,
you do a parking lot,
It's just
it takes
gravel.
30 days to...
Right. It's just gravel on there, so it's not like we're paving or anything like that. So, but yeah, and there is a small parking lot there, and we may go ahead and open before we actually get that one finished, if everything else falls into place, because I want to get it open as soon
Yeah,
as
well, I've had a
possible.
lot of calls about it. You know, we
Yes.
told them it was going to open last October.
I know.
And here we are in 2010.
I know, they've had lots of
I hate to tell-
construction
I hate to
issues.
tell people that, and then we're 6 months. to a
I
year.
understand, and that's why hedged last time when you asked me. I said I needed to call and ask, and that's the answer I got from Mr. Greenfeather, so I'm just going on what he told me.
All right, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Sharon? I was at the ADARE office yesterday, and they're doing a very good job up there.
Thank you. I'm
And
glad
there's
to
a
hear that.
big sign posted that say J office open soon.
Yes, we've been promoting it. I didn't put a date up there, I was afraid to.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Self-governance, Ms. Hanby? Hi, Vicki.
Hello. Good afternoon. I believe you had my report. The only update that I have is that on the roads funding that we did receive $3,575,000 worth of additional roads funding for 2010. So that money did come in since the report. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Vicki?
I've got a
Mr.
comment.
Messer?
Vicki, I know some of the issues on the roads program, and what I'd like to see, and certainly would recommend at the next NCAI meeting that takes place, that we really have somebody there to either brief people on those committees about it, because I know it's a big fiasco now as far as the reauthorization of the new roads program. You know, I sit in on a meeting, but sometimes I don't have the up-to-date information, so if you could pass that along, whoever we need to get to, try to make sure they're there. So it's getting to be an issue that if we don't get on it, stay on top of it, we could lose a lot of funding in Oklahoma. Thank you.
Did you have any update on the contract support costs that they're so far behind on 09 and 10? There was an arrearage or something, around 15 million for 09 and around 20 million for 2010.
Well, for IHS, they are very close to issuing the shortfall report. They pretty well have their, they've been doing it for a longer period of time, of course, but until that shortfall report is completed, they can't do the allocation, the distribution of funds. IHS is very close to doing that. We should see that this month, probably.
Good.
On DOI, however, I'm on that work group. The tribal representatives had tried to get a meeting together. It's in the policy, the national policy, that work group, which is comprised of both tribal representatives and federal reps. It's in the policy that we will meet at least once a year. We had not done that. We had issues with the 07 and 08 shortfall reports. Rhonda Butcher, who's the tribal co-chair, and myself, and I think one other person actually went to Albuquerque to assist in training the VIA contracting officers on contract support, probably a year and a half or so ago, to try to help them and assist them in implementing this policy. We had not met in some time. We knew there were still some issues. And while we were working on the implementation of the policy, of course, we also had attorneys and other folks working along with our Washington office on advocating for additional funding. We knew that if additional funding comes down and the shortfall report's not ready, there won't be a way for that distribution to take place, and especially to take place quickly. There's been a lot of emails back and forth. The attorneys got involved and actually filed, and I'm not an attorney, I can't remember what it's called, but some type of motion in the court system that the Department of Interior was not living up to the Raymond settlement, the conditions in the Raymond settlement. And so that caused a flurry of action within the department. They issued a memo to the regional directors and others that this was top priority to start working on this shortfall report and get it done. The last word I had just this weekend is that the Alaska region has got additional issues that need to be addressed. I spoke to some people just yesterday on the work group. We're trying to get a face-to-face meeting to sit down and go through the information that's been submitted, to look and see how accurate, and also to address the specific issues to the Alaska region and what we can do to, we don't want to hold up the rest of the country for one area having specific issues. So how do we resolve that? We need to sit down as a group and decide how we want to move forward. And those types of specific issues are not, how do I say that? The policy covers part of that, but not specific to that situation. And so that's where it is. And until that is resolved, we don't get our additional contract support cost funding. So even though we've advocated and the money is there at the department level, how that gets distributed nationwide is at issue.
Thank you. Mr. Baker?
That's probably more than you ever wanted to know about contract support. So.
No, it's very good.
Vicki, I know this isn't the health committee, but with the president's health bill and all that, have you all been pondering how it's going to affect IHS and our clinics and our hospitals, and I mean, have we been into much discussion at administration level on what we think, best guess, how it's going to affect us?
Absolutely. And from an operational standpoint, of course, Melissa Gower with the health department is taking the lead on that, but we have had some emails that came out from the IHS director outlining specifically how some of the things are, how they perceive some things are going to affect those of us in IHS. Probably actually get that off the website, but we can share that with you as well. It's actually a bullet point, issue by issue email that was sent out from the director of IHS. And of course there have been discussions at the advisory committee meetings, and as a matter of fact, I just went by the service team meeting earlier today, and the health department was briefing other departments as to some of the things that are going to be taking place. And I'm sure that can be shared with you.
I, for one, whatever you have, I'd like to see. And I imagine everybody here, we're going to start getting questions about how it's going to affect our people and our services. And I mean, in one scenario, I can see how we could flourish under this, but I'd like as much information as you have.
Okay. You should get that to Shelley so she can distribute it.
Yes.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Ms. Canby.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hummingbird, you grace us with your presence today. Gaming Commission?
Yo, I'm glad to be before the council today in the Rules Committee meeting. I believe my report did make it in time, I hope. If not, I will have to eat those words. But I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have regarding that report, or I believe there was also another report I provided to the council members on contract payments that were made by our tribe and other tribes across the state. If you have any questions on that, I'll be glad to answer those as well.
Questions? Comments? Did I have your report today?
Shortest one in history. Oh, maybe not.
Jamie, I didn't ask this question, but one of the council members asked last committee meeting to see if you could find out how much the three tribes in Tulsa area contribute to the paramedic racing. Did you get a chance to look at that and see
Yes,
how many goes from each tribe?
I believe, if I recall the question correctly, it was how much we contribute to their operating budget
Yeah.
along that lines. I've tried to find out that information. As far as their budget goes, I cannot get that information. The best information I can get is what I've provided in terms of what has been paid into under the terms of the compact. I would hazard a guess, though, that the tribes make up a fair portion of their operating budget.
Did you say 50% or more?
I'd hate to hazard a guess, but I haven't given up my line of inquiry on that one. It's just right now that information is not public information, and I don't have the ability to give you a good answer.
Well, it'd be interesting to see because, you know, if the tribes that are in that particular area that are contributing 50, 60, or 70%, you know, it's kind of burns me that we're almost supporting that racetrack up there by our contributions to it. So keep
Yeah.
trying if you can get it up in and see what the contribution.
Not a problem. Yeah, if you look just at what we pay on average around, I think around $55,000 to $60,000 a month,
Yeah,
which over the course of a year, that's $600,000,
exactly.
being conservative.
And I'm not sure what the total amount that they draw in there for a minute.
Yeah. And the amounts that we pay, we being the three tribes in that area, are prorated, so each one of them pays the share based on the number of machines we have operating. So if we are making up roughly 45% at 600,000, then the other 55% is going to be, of course, more than that. So they're getting over $1 million from the tribes every year.
And the fall, when is the compact going to come up again for that particular?
It'll come up in 2020 is the term, but the way the compact was written, it automatically extends unless there is a willingness by both parties to renegotiate, which would require a change to the state law.
All right. Well, it'd be interesting to see those numbers and see what contributions are.
If I get my hands on them, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lindberg? Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you very much.
Number 8 is codification, and included in your report, Mr. Hembry, Ms. Britton here has an update on Registrar too.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Madam Chairman. We are waiting on one of the last big pieces of the codification puzzle to be completed, and that would be the Tribal Gaming Act. It is set on today's agenda, but it's my understanding it will be pulled today. Okay. We're waiting on that because if we're going to do codification, we want, this is a major piece, and wouldn't make too much sense to go forward and then have a major revision right afterwards. The only other thing is that we're waiting on the election law to see how districting falls out. We should have an evidentiary hearing sometime in April on that, and hopefully that clears that up. But those are the two major things, other than some minor housekeeping that we're waiting to get it out. As soon as we get that done, we will send it to West, and they will give us a hard estimate, and we'll go with it from there.
Shelley is, they've been working on Registrar for a while, and she has an updated status report of where we are, and you want to tell them just briefly what Registrar is and then go from there?
Registrar is an online tracking system for all of our legislation, minutes, council, bios. You can find what the current council, what legislation has been sponsored. I've recently entered all council members from 1976 forward, so if anybody has pictures of the older council members, I can attach them, because right now all I have is this council and the council prior. We have just completed instructions and directions on define this, go here, do this, go here, that type of thing. I've just gotten approval on those. The next step is to get those inserted on our webpage and to come up with a new council banner. And I've given out the link to a few people to test and have gotten all good results back. Nothing negative to point to this far that I'm aware of. They're saying that it's everything that they've looked for has been easily found and is in good quality. It's easy to use, narrowed searches, very streamlined and straightforward. Hopefully, I'm not sure how long it will take to get the information inserted into our homepage. That's my next step, to find out the length of time that will take.
Anybody have any questions? Ms. Britton? She's been working on this for a while.
Once Legistar comes out, is that going to be, can we access it by using Cherokee Exchange system?
Well,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
but right now, once it's publicized, when you go to Cherokee.org and then you go to the legislative tab, you'll go into a home page, and that page will give you the instructions on how to use it, and will provide you links to go to the Legistar system.
And my concern was to get on from the Cherokee Exchange. Okay, thanks.
And Shelley, I think you can blame Pat Ragsdale for that program. Pat, did you hear that?
I'm sorry.
We're blaming you for that program.
Which?
Legistar, didn't you bring that forward? Ms. Cameron?
I just want to thank you, Madam Speaker, and especially Shelley for both work that you've put in. And I know Pat brought this forward. I think the first budget I ever got to vote on at council, I think it failed by one vote that first time around, but I really appreciate that we're moving in this direction so that people have more access. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, next report is our Tribal Youth Council, Danielle Call. All right, we've been looking forward to this.
Sioniga, Danielle Dawadon, NSU Digadel Kwasi. Hello everyone, my name is Danielle Culp. I go to school at Northeastern State University. A little about me, I represented District 7. It was my hometown for 4 years on the previous youth council. But this year, after we have revamped the youth council, I have had the opportunity and the privilege to serve as a member at large. Today I just want to speak in front of you and let you know the changes that we have made to the youth council. We were previously known as the Cherokee Nation Tribal Youth Council. We re-looked at a lot of things, and when we started to look at this, we saw that we wanted to pick out a name that was more appropriate for the things that we wanted to accomplish. And with this, we chose the name the Cherokee Nation Youth Leadership Council. This was very fitting because we used to be under the Education Department, but we recently have moved under the Leadership Department. So we are now under Todd Enlow, but our advisor, our direct advisor that we go to is Patrick Hill. We've been through a lot. We've hit some rough patches. We're trying to work them out. We went back and we looked at the original resolution that the council passed in 1989. We looked at this and we decided that we wanted to realign the youth council to fit the resolution that was passed. And so with that, we are reorganizing the youth council under a new name and under new leadership. In front of you, you all have our new mission statement. What we did is when we got together after we had our new group seated, we kind of sat in a round robin and we decided what was important to us and what we wanted to portray for the future. And this was our new mission statement, that the Cherokee Nation Youth Leadership Council, believing that leadership is essential to our future, will strive to serve our youth by increasing our knowledge, expanding our capabilities, acting with purity of heart and generosity of compassion, and in the spirit of Gadugi, we will honor our past, protect our present, prepare our future, and promote the spiritual, physical, and mental well-being of our youth for the enduring perpetuation of our culture. Basically what we did is we looked at what was important. And throughout this next year, we want to look at this mission statement and the things that we did say were important, and we want to focus our activities on this. We have already started to do some of this. Our language is a big push that we do. We actually have the privilege of having J.C. Lowe on our council. We also have a speaker, Isaiah Soap, and they work with us each month. And they work with us in the language, and they teach us basic conversational, so that we are showing that language is important to our youth and that we're doing something to make sure that our language is spoken. Another thing that is important to us is actually getting the youth that we represent involved and engaging them in this process, because each one of us represents certain youth from our districts or our counties. And so in doing this, we have started to formulate a survey that is pinpointed at youth and the concerns that they have, so that we can properly reflect the concerns that they have. The current council that we have now, some of us are seated for 1 year. Since we are in a transition period, it's a little funny the way we're represented. I am a member at large, and there are 11 other people on the council. Some of these people, as you'll see on the back of our mission statement, they represent districts, and then you'll also see that some of them represent counties. As we're starting to figure things out, the new council will represent the 14 counties, and it will have 1 member at large. So they'll no longer be by the districts. And this will begin next year. So there'll be 14 counties, and there'll be 1 member at large. On the back of your sheet, we have provided you with a list of all the people that are currently seated on the council and where they are from and the offices that they hold. I have the privilege to serve as president for this year. Our vice president is Isaiah Soap. We have a secretary. Her name is Alexandra Tollefson. And we also have a parliamentarian, Christina Hanby. I think at this time, Todd wanted to come up and speak with you guys.
Todd.
Let me start off by saying that I am very proud of these youth that represent the Cherokee Nation on this youth council. They do some incredible things inside their schools and their communities. And as Danielle stated, we've been in a state of transition. We've really gone back and looked at, well, what's the purpose of the Youth Council? And that's why we went back to the Resolution 8089 by the council, where they established the Youth Council to carry the voice of the youth back to the council. So that's why we requested the Youth Council have the opportunity to speak before the council once a quarter. So rather than once a month, we wanted to have some time to bring back something that was useful and meaningful. And as Danielle mentioned, we are executing a survey, but just a couple of things that we've gleaned out of that so far in just talking to our youth council. The first is that they don't have access to a lot of technology. I mean, we've all carried cell phone devices, but still yet a lot of the rural communities don't have access to internet. And so I was under the false assumption that once they got to school, then that we could find some way to communicate with them. Well, the problem with that is that the majority of the schools block personal email addresses, access to Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, and all the other things that the youth of America enjoy doing today. So it's difficult to even communicate with them with new technology devices. One of their primary focus is cultural identity through understanding our history and language. And that is what they have focused this entire year on. So during spring break, we actually had a guest come in from Ireland, and he shared with us the stories that they face in Ireland of trying to preserve and restore the Gaelic language. And so it was an interesting dialogue to find the commonalities that we all face and the challenges that we face and the adversity that they faced along with us. So that's why we're here today. So we hope to come back in the next quarter, have some more information. So we'll tell you about some of the things that we're doing in the Youth Council, but more importantly, what we hope to bring back is the voice of the youth, and so that you understand. I know I had a false assumption, and I learn something every day or every time we meet with these guys. So I hope that we bring back some useful and meaningful information. As a secondary piece to that, we've committed that we're going to develop these youth, and so we've expanded our program to go from basically 15 to 24. The 24, and it'll be split up next year into two different youth councils, one focused on high school. The second council will be focused on college and career age. And so the thought is that if somebody wishes to progress through the system, they have the opportunity to become community leaders, leaders in the family, or ultimately if they choose to serve the nation in some type of elected capacity, they have an in-depth knowledge of the history and also the current workings of the government today, as well as the businesses. So those are the kinds of experiences that we're hoping to find to get these kids the experiences that they need. So please be mentors to your youth council members. They are looking for some guidance and instruction, and mentoring is a big way to do that. So please take advantage to make sure you do that.
Councilman Soap?
Yeah, Tom, what's the biggest challenge from the technology standpoint? I mean, it's there's the council is represented here, and they have opportunities to indulge in a lot of technology. So what's keeping us from affording our council members or the leadership team those resources? If it's important to invest a whole department into that, what's really inhibiting us from making that commitment to this group of young people?
A lot of it has to do with cost. Verizon has, just as an example, I saw on the news the other day, Verizon has made a change that if you have a smartphone, you're required now to carry a $10 a month internet access. A lot of parents don't wish that their kids to have that, but to carry an iPhone is usually about $100 a month, and a lot of times that's limiting for the youth and the communities. They have access to technology in school, but it's very focused and very limited, so anything outside of normal school activities and normal school functions is not allowed during school hours. There are a few schools that do open up and allow that sort of activity, but not very many.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Baker?
Yes, Speaker. The at-large council person, do they represent the people living outside the Cherokee Nation?
Yeah, what we tried to do, it was patterned for the last several years, basically since '89 after the council, but knowing that districts could potentially change in the near future, we went back and looked at the purpose and what we wanted to try and do, and so we are going to county representation. But the thought and the goal is that we would also start to go out and reach students that are perhaps going on to university at OU or University of Kansas or other areas and connect with them as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Buzzer?
Todd, is there any procedures on if we want some of the youth council from our district to come to a community meeting? Do we need to contact you or just personally call them and ask them to come? How do you want to?
Personally call them, but also like you to try and go through Patrick so we can try and coordinate things that are going on. If we need to do additional things, Patrick can to help communicate that. If, for example, if Danielle was invited to something in Kara's district but was unable to attend, we can try and fill a replacement. What is your extension?
Oh, no.
207-3919 is Patrick's direct line.
Okay.
And all, Mr. Buzzer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoskin?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Do the youth counselors get reimbursed for travel expenses?
Yes.
That's all. That's been the case for a while.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. I'm
Okay,
glad to have them.
just have one additional comment. You guys were talking about the healthcare reform and the impact. Actually, if you go out to Cherokee.org, on the Check It Out section, there's this 2-page document that was released just earlier this week or over the weekend that talks about the impacts, and it's frequently asked questions. So I just printed out one copy, but I want to make notes under the Check It Out section on Cherokee.org. So I'll give this to Shelley.
was in a meeting with the health group at noon, and I just absolutely go check this out, but Melissa is going to bring copies of this for everybody at next health committee. So we'll have them to hand out to constituents if you want them.
Thank you.
Thank you. What else?
Thank you, Danielle. There being no old business pending, moving on to new business. First resolution concerns the renomination of John Scher to the editorial board. Ms. Calum Watts.
So I don't think Mr. Scher could be here. Right, so are you presenting on?
I suppose I am. Thank you, council members, Madam Speaker, council members. This is a renomination of Mr. Scher for the editorial board. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Scher was not able to be here today. He is located in California. He is a Cherokee citizen. And again, once again, this is a renomination. Principal Chief is putting forth Mr. Scher for renomination.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Madam
Item
Speaker.
2 under new business, that item, the Gaming Act was withdrawn, referred to work. Anything you want to comment on as far as that's concerned?
I think Mr. Hembry addressed that earlier. Jamie's been working really hard to pull all of the updates together for the codification. We'd like to withdraw that to review that a little bit longer. There's some other additional things that need to be included, so we'd like to resubmit that at another time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3, discussion on amending the Advisory Board Act. Dr. Cobb.
This act, again, is for discussion only. This act amends Legislative Act 1696. As we're well aware, but I'll, with those in the audience, we currently have 3 council advisory board members, 3 for C&E, 3 for C&B, and 3 for C&I. And with the way that the board, C&B, C&I, and C&E board has now come together as one meeting, one board, we have to decide if 9 counselors, 9 advisory council members, we have to decide several things. And the 3 issues with this are, and why I wanted to put this for discussion only, the things we need to hammer out. There has been some discussion, believe it or not. We need to decide if 9 counselors, 9 advisory board members, does violate a quorum law rule. So we do need to discuss that. Number 2, once we get past that, we need to decide number of advisory board members, being aware that if we decide that 9 counselors violates quorum procedure, that at a minimum we need to drop 1 of our advisory board members, because we currently have 9, and this act basically says that no more than 8 members of the Cherokee Nation Council can be in advisory positions. It does not change the fact we have all rights and privileges as advisory board members except voting privileges. There is some new language in here also that talks about board director shall not serve more than 4 consecutive years without confirmation by the tribal council to the corporation whose majority shareholder is the nation. So basically the 3 issues here is we need to decide if 9 violates a quorum, and once we move from that, we need to decide a number of advisory council members on this board, realizing that if we stick even with 8 at a minimum, we have to drop 1 of our advisory council members. I will put forth that I personally am probably leaning toward 3. I would open discussion to 6. I personally, but this is why we're discussing, I think 8 may be too many, I'll be honest with you, but I'm open to that. So that's why we're here. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Hoskin and then Mr. Baker.
you, Madam Speaker. My opinion is that 9 is in troubled water. You're in troubled water if we do that. I think the FOIA Act, as it's been interpreted by the Attorney General's office, contains a loophole you could drive a truck through as far as quorum, because the Attorney General didn't answer, I think, precisely the very important question as to whether a meeting of 9 council members outside of this office, some other context, would constitute a meeting within the meaning of that word, the Freedom of Information Act. I think it does. I think we ought to be concerned here with the spirit of the law, not so much whether the technical provisions that the Attorney General found, that is to say, you can meet as many as you want as long as you don't do so willfully and with malice. Again, that's the loophole, I think, that swallows up the rule. But I do think we ought to be very cautious and legislate from a standpoint that let's err on the side of caution. 9's too many from the Freedom of Information Act standpoint. 8's okay. I think it's a fair question as to whether it needs to be less than 8. But my feeling is that 9 is trouble and 8 is okay. Thank you, Minister.
Mr. Baker.
And I really think that 3 is the best number, because from time to time, other council people want to attend those meetings that are not advisory board members. Well, if you have 8, then you're precluding any other council member from showing up for a certain issue or anything like that. And so, I mean, if we pick 3 advisory board members, the meetings have always been open to the council members, and it would be much less risk of running the problem of 9 folks showing up and somebody having to go out in the hall and not be able to listen. I mean, we've got 3 at each board meeting. I don't think that every board meeting has all 3 advisory board members at it, but I really think 3 is a really good number for the advisory board members, leaving space for 4 or 5 other folks to show up without creating any kind of a problem to those meetings.
Okay,
I'm done.
Mr. Embry?
A suggestion to the council when you're giving thought to this in the coming months, or coming month, is that these corporations affect the entire government. They affect obviously executive finance. Their dividends affect health, culture, education, etc. One idea that you may propose or consider is to have the advisory board members be the committee chairs of your committees. You've already selected these people for their leadership qualities. They each have a very important aspect toward this council to look after that certain area, and you might consider having your advisory board to this super board of directors be the chairs of your committees, and I just put that out as consideration.
Any other comments? Yes, Ms. Camelot?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, because I was wondering too, what Councilman Bill John Baker brought up about the concern about precluding people from those meetings. Because the reality is, whether we make it 8 or 3 or none or 1, we should all have the right to attend those meetings. But then we have to balance that with the concerns brought up by the AG's opinion and those questions raised. But I still think, I would hate that anyone that wanted to, on this body, that wanted to attend those meetings would not be able to go. So how do we address that issue? Because it's important that if all 17 of us wanted to show up, that what would we need to do? Because we would run that risk today, regardless, even under the old structure. And I think we need to have more discussion around that, because I think there's going to be more concerns now that we're coming together as one unit with that being able to filter down information and our communication with our employees and the structuring of the business. There's no easy answer here, and I think that's what Councilor Cobb's alluding to. I'm glad you brought up this legislation. I don't know. I think we just need to have a lot more discussion before there's a final decision on this. And it begs the question of whether we not even really need the formality of the official people on there, since we're non-voting members too, because we should have access to this regardless of the legislation put in front. In terms of the information that we're supposed to, like, what it reads in the legislation about access to the full board's meeting notes and details and all that. So I'm curious if the lawyers may have more, a better outlook on this, or a different outlook, or more depth to what, because I would assume anyone on here could ask for that same information that says that we're supposed to have, whether we're designated or not. And I don't want anybody excluded, would be my concern.
Todd, you had your hand. Did you want to respond to her, or Mr. Hoskin, were you going to respond to her?
I was going to speak to it, but I'd defer to Todd.
Okay.
Well, and Ms. Callen-Watts is right, but we need to give some very careful, thought to this, and one of the issues, as we raise up here, is that, and remember, by just being in the same room does not constitute a meeting. Okay, all 17 of you can be in the House of Representatives, United States House of Representatives gallery, or you can be at a Sequoia basketball game. Just because there's a quorum or a majority of you there does not does not trigger that a meeting took place. A meeting takes place when you get in and you all discuss and make decisions concerning the business of the Cherokee Nation. Now, the advisory board members, and I believe it is necessary that we designate some number of you to be on the advisory board. So, because not only does that give you access, everyone in here, I, as a Cherokee citizen, have access to a majority of that information. You, as council members, have access to more than I have. But being designated on the advisory board members also allows you to get proprietary information, executive session information, be there, look at it, discuss it, so which I think is, and to be a conduit of information, be a conduit for that information to the rest of the council. So I think it's important that you designate those. But and I will speak with Attorney General Hammonds to make sure that we outline have a clear course as to just because you're in the same room and attending and watching this meeting does not necessarily mean that it is a meeting per se, because you're not in a deliberative process and making decisions concerning the business of Cherokee Nation. You have the right to attend just like anybody else, whether you're an advisory board member or not, and I would encourage you to do so. But we will give that very, very careful consideration to make sure that the spirit, and not only the words, but the spirit of FOIA is not violated.
Mr. Hoskin?
I think Councilor Callen-Watts' point's a good one, and FOIA is about numbers, and it's about whether something's a meaning within the meaning of FOIA. And I think that's what I'm hearing from Todd Embry. So you risk these advisory boards meetings being a meeting within the meaning of FOIA. So one response to that, rather than to have some understanding between the branches about whether something is a meeting within the meaning of the FOIA Act, I think the FOIA Act ought to perhaps be very carefully and precisely amended so that participation in an advisory board meeting is not a meeting within the meaning of FOIA. And I don't know if, Todd, that's my opinion, is that if we're going to do it, we have to do it very carefully and precisely, and we ought to do it statutorily rather than just some understanding that this particular meeting is not run afoul of FOIA. So I would think, as we proceed further, we probably need to take another look at FOIA. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Ms. Callen-Watts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe we should look at this differently than how we've done it then. It made sense when we had all these separate business units that we would divvy up the workload, and we designated 3, or we could have made it 5, to help divvy up the workload and then help communicate back. So maybe we should have this law state that we should all have access to these informations, and we can choose to participate because there's a lot of email and phone calls or the meeting notices. but that we would all have equal access, and then also at the same time, we would need to, as Councilman Hoskin had suggested, then amend the FOIA laws to more appropriately protect our businesses, that we understand that those are proprietary information and confidential that cannot be just disseminated out, that we had ownership with, we're able to participate in those meetings and get that level of access, that we also cannot just broadcast that to the news without going through appropriate channels, but that also make sure clear that everybody on this body did have access to it, but under what guidance, I guess. And therefore, we wouldn't have maybe this formal structure in the same way as we had in the past, but everyone that wanted to choose to opt into managing that communication on the, and maybe they only want to do a portion. Maybe people want to retain only with C&I business or C&B or C&E under the structure of the bigger, and maybe some people want to participate in all of it. And then they could choose to opt in as they wanted to, so chose, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that might be a better deal because I want to make sure everybody on this table feels engaged as they want to feel engaged. Instead of cutting people out, which I think if we approach it the different way, we would cut good people out of the process with a meaningful voice that want to be at the table.
Great. Mr. Thornton?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Madam Chair, I'm kind of going along with Carrie on this and Mr. Hoskins, but I don't see why there wouldn't be some kind of a way, because they're replacing 3 boards with 1 board, the way I understand it. Are they having 17 members on that board? With 17 members. And then, you know, just to have 3 council people, if they show up there, wouldn't seem right to me, you know. I think there should be some way that they show an agenda at their meeting. If they can post an agenda, then we can post an agenda and have a meeting there. And just have another meeting on another day of the month. And all 17 council people can show up at that meeting.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And I don't see why we couldn't go ahead and post an agenda and have a meeting.
Anybody else? Comments? Mr. Baker, you're awfully quiet today.
Yes. I'm thinking.
Dr. Cox?
I would say that some good discussion. Planning on bringing this back hopefully next month. Somebody let me know your suggestions, if any, or Todd, one of us, and we'll go from there.
You want those suggestions to come to Kelly?
That'd be even better.
Okay.
That's why you're the speaker and I'm not.
Any other questions or comments? So we want, Todd, can you be ready next month with this?
Absolutely.
And you'll be working with Ms. Hammonds?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and we will also take a look at FOIA, and it might be that we bring that up off the table at the same time too, but we will have legislation for you to consider next month.
Thank you. Okay, any announcements? No announcements? I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You didn't.
Nay.